everyone. My name is Adam Williams, and you are either listening or perhaps watching to another episode of Retail Redeveloped. Now, today is a special start to a little bit of a different short form podcast that we're doing. I'm being joined by Clayton Seeley. You guys probably know him better as CLT Development. He's got a fervent following online, and frankly, I follow him. You should follow him if you care at all about what's going on in Charlotte. Clayton, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, man. How are you doing today?
Hey, can't complain. So here's what I thought we would do, Clayton. I'm going to hit you with some off-the-cuff topics, right? We're going to keep this quick. We're going to keep it down to a minute or so. I want to hear your kind of hot take on what's going on in Charlotte. So without further ado, I'm going to get it started. Cool?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. First off, hot take. Is Office dead?
No. I think it's kind of naive for people to expect that the status quo is dead. You know, we are creatures of habit, and status quo is what we're used to. Office will look completely different when we open back up, but no, I don't think it's dead. I think there'll be more space per person. I think there'll be more flexibility about when you can come into the office. And I think there will be more of a focus on space usage, when people come in, how people work in an office environment. I think collaboration will be more important than ever. We've been spending this time, face to face from a camera. We haven't been able to read each other's body language. We haven't been able to actually get each other's reaction. We need to be face to face, and the office environment will remain face to face. It'll just take, herd immunity.
So I was really hoping to disagree with you on this to start us off with some back and forth. I agree completely. I don't think Office is dead. I am actually very, very interested and somewhat fascinated with what those office floor plans will look like and what kind of the office culture will look like. Pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, it was how open can we get, how destructured, how open can we get the office environment, and how many humans can we just smash into this environment. Hard to see that coming back day one. Hard to see that coming back day 365. So it'll be very curious to see what the actual office footprint will look like. I've heard some people say that there's going to be a 20 or 30% reduction in the actual needs of employers. Mm-hmm. And then I've heard somebody else come back and say, you're crazy. For those 100 employees, if you needed X number of square feet, you're going to need X plus 20% of those square feet. So yeah, certainly no magic 8 ball here with answers. But I see a kind of a culture. I don't want to say culture collapse because that's kind of hyperbole, but I see a culture crisis coming where we have all of these workers that are strewn to the wind. Everybody is working kind of at their own agenda. It's like me, I'm trying to get work done, and I've got a dog barking, and I've got, people knocking on the door for FedEx and Amazon. And it's hard to get into the flow, and it's hard not seeing people and collaborating with people. So I think, to your point, Office being dead sounds a little far-fetched. I do think that Uptown Charlotte, and let's magnify that across the country, I think that center city business districts have probably been the hardest hit here. And I think you could argue that they're going to be the slowest to recover. You could also argue that the first major employer that announces that they're sending 60% of their workforce back is going to be a domino effect that kind of catapults CBDs back in the forefront.
So I think CBDs is where we're just going to learn the most. I think that they are going to come back quickly, but I think we are going to have to approach how we built the CBD before and how we need to build it in the future so that we can avoid kind of like the crippling slowdown that happened. You go to Uptown and stand at Trade and Tryon versus if you go to Camden and West Boulevard and you look around you, there is an obvious difference. And it's all just kind of the product of 1990s urban planning versus 2010 to 2021 urban planning.
Well, Clayton, unpack that. What do you mean? Like what could have been done differently in Uptown to kind of stem that crisis? Like help me understand exactly what you're saying.
Well, I think that, we needed to create more purposeful spaces when we first started building up Uptown. And you can see that happening with like Ally Center Charlotte. And you can see that happening a little bit with Legacy Union on Church Street with how they've programmed in retail spaces. I think once we got to a certain point, you have more of an opportunity to create destinations. And a lot of Uptown's problem is that the buildings that were built in the 90s and the early 2000s, a lot of them don't really have that opportunity. You keep retail off the street. You have blank walls, large parking decks. A lot of those things aren't ever going away, but you can start to position retail back into those buildings like Crescent is doing, for instance, at One Independence Center. I mean, does that necessarily mean we will get vibrant retail opportunities? Maybe not. But I think once you can program smaller uses into those, and I know we've talked previously that like food halls are great, but they are still expensive. So that doesn't necessarily bring it. But if you could start to have more of that kind of concept uptown and give more micro retail spaces for entrepreneurs, I think you can bring vibrancy back. You just you have to be very selective with how you program and merchandise retail spaces to have them come back.
I think you're hitting on something important. I do think grassroots retail could be a tremendous boost to the uptown retail scene and uptown in general. But the problem with grassroots retail in an already extremely well-established and institutionally driven central business district is somebody's got to subsidize that. Like somebody's got to pay the tab, right? Like JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, like the level of players that own the major holdings in uptown Charlotte, they're not looking to give out free lunch, right? They bought at a high number and they've got to perform for their investors. And somebody's got to go in and subsidize that. I think that, somebody that hit on something interesting is, what is it called? Central Rail Yard, David Furman's project over in South End. I think that's the closest thing that anybody's done that can show that you can do grassroots retail and, maybe it's not going to have this like high flying return, but it's not a loss leader. I think it's something that you can grow on. I look at that as being a really interesting model as things continue to evolve uptown. And I think that micro retail done in a smart way and somebody having the guts to take a chance on that could be a step in the right direction.
And that will be that concept of micro retail will be part of their Centro Square project with Square at South End. And I believe Shorenstein will have that kind of concept along the rail trail on at the East-West project. But don't quote me on that. That's just what I've heard.
I will not quote you on that.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to quote you on that, so I will definitely not quote you on that.
I'm quoting myself.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, well, that I think is a really, really good snapshot of our opinions on the office market now and the office market in the future. Clayton, thank you so much. That was a lot of fun.